6 months with no nanny, until the Apache woman told the rancher, "I'm here now." It had been a bright spring morning on the ranch, but the beauty of the day did little to lift the heavy weight in the rancher's chest. For 6 months now, he had been managing everything on his own, and each day seemed to stretch longer than the one before. The ranch, with its wide-open fields, grazing cattle, and dusty barns, had always been a place of pride for him. It was a place he had inherited from his father, and he had spent countless years tending to it, learning every small secret about the land, the animals, and even the weather. But all the skills he had honed over a lifetime suddenly felt insufficient. The reason was simple. He had no one to help with his children. 6 months ago, his nanny, who had been more like a family member than an employee, had left unexpectedly. She had cared for the children with a steady hand and an endless supply of patience, guiding them through their days with warmth and consistency. Her departure had been sudden, leaving the rancher in a state of shock. At first, he had thought he could manage without her. After all, he had raised himself in a rough and disciplined environment. Surely he could handle a few little children. But the reality was far harsher than he had imagined. Each morning began before sunrise. The rancher would wait to the low calls of the cattle in the distance, and the first faint rays of light spilling across the fields. He had learned to move quietly, careful not to wake the children too early, though often he failed. The older ones would stir with soft groans, rubbing sleep from their eyes, while the youngest would cling to him, still tangled in blankets too sleepy to speak. Breakfast became a complicated dance of cooking, feeding, and calming temper tantrums, all while keeping an eye on the animals. The chickens needed feeding, the milk cows had to be milked, and the goats wandered as if testing his patience. Sometimes he wished the day could simply pause, giving him a moment to catch his breath. But the demands of the ranch never allowed such luxury. The afternoons were even more challenging. Schoolwork needed supervision, meals had to be prepared, and chores stretched into endless lists that seemed impossible to finish. The rancher often felt torn between his responsibilities to the land and his responsibilities to his children. One moment he would be repairing a broken fence under the scorching sun, and the next he would be chasing the youngest around the yard to stop them from putting mud in the flower beds. He remembered the way the old nanny used to guide the children through their lessons, making learning feel like an adventure rather than a task. Without her, math became a struggle, reading was a battle, and even simple instructions were met with resistance. The rancher had patience, yes, but patience has its limits, and by mid-afternoon, he was often completely drained. Evenings brought their own set of challenges. Dinner had to be cooked and served, stories needed to be read, baths prepared, and bedtime routines enforced. The rancher would often sit exhausted on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the hills, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. He remembered how the house had once been filled with laughter and easy routines. Now, silence hung awkwardly in the corners, broken only by the occasional cry of frustration from the children or the groan of his own tired body. Sleep became a luxury rather than a necessity, as he stayed awake worrying about the animals, the fences, and whether he was doing enough for his children. Friends and neighbors offered help when they could, but no one could stay long enough to make a real difference. Temporary babysitters came and went, each one struggling to understand the rhythm of ranch life and the personalities of the children. While the rancher appreciated their effort, it was never quite enough. The children missed the steady presence they had once had, and small accidents began to happen. Scrapes, spills, and broken dishes became more frequent. The rancher found himself apologizing to neighbors and managing minor disasters almost daily. Pride made it hard for him to ask for help constantly, but even he had to admit that 6 months without a stable caretaker was taking its toll. Through it all, the rancher carried a quiet frustration. He was used to working hard, solving problems, and keeping the ranch running smoothly. But managing children, especially without guidance, was an entirely different challenge. There were moments when he felt completely overwhelmed, moments when he wanted to give up and admit that he simply could not do it all alone. Yet deep down he also knew he could not let the children feel the full weight of his exhaustion. They needed consistency, care, and love, even if it meant sacrificing his own comfort and energy. Despite the struggles, there were small moments of joy. watching the children discover the simple pleasures of the ranch, finding a new chick in the chicken coop, learning to ride a pony, or marveling at the first snowfall of winter, brought warmth to his heart. Those moments reminded him why he persevered, why he refused to give up even when the days felt endless. He cherished the way their eyes lit up with curiosity and wonder, and he held on to the hope that someone would come to help, someone who could bring balance back into their lives. The rancher often reflected on the past, remembering the days when the nanny had been there, smoothing out the chaos with quiet efficiency. He thought of the bedtime stories she told, the way she soothed tears, and the gentle guidance she gave to every aspect of their lives. Those memories felt like distant dreams now, reminders of a stability he longed to reclaim. He realized how much a single person could influence a household, how their presence could shape the rhythm and energy of a family. It was a humbling thought, one that made him appreciate not just the work the nanny had done, but the dedication and love she had poured into every day. As the sun dipped behind the hills and the ranch grew quiet for the night, the rancher would often stand at the edge of the fields, looking at the stars beginning to twinkle above. The stillness of the night contrasted sharply with the chaos of his days, and in that quiet, he allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He admitted, if only to himself, that life had become harder than he ever imagined. Yet he also knew that perseverance was his only option. For 6 months he had faced this challenge alone, and he had survived. That alone was a testament to his strength, even if exhaustion clung to him like a shadow. In those moments, he promised himself that change was coming. He didn't yet know who would arrive or how, but he believed that the right person would come to help, to restore order, and to bring back the warmth and joy that had been missing. He held on to that belief even in the face of daily struggle, because giving up was not an option. The ranch, the children, and the legacy of his family all depended on his resilience. And so, he prepared himself for each new day, facing the endless cycle of chores, lessons, meals, and bedtime routines with determination, hoping that soon someone would arrive to help him bear the load. The days stretched long and heavy on the ranch, and the rancher had grown accustomed to a life of constant motion and constant worry. 6 months without help had tested him in ways he had never imagined. Each morning he woke before dawn, moving quietly through the rooms to avoid waking the children too early. Yet, even with the careful steps, the youngest often stirred, calling out with sleepy voices that tugged at his heart. He would scoop them up, rocking them gently until they calmed, all while mentally preparing for the long day ahead. It was exhausting, but he had no choice. There was no one else to shoulder the burden. At first, he tried to maintain the routines he had relied on when the nanny was still there. He woke the children, helped them get dressed, and prepared their breakfast. But simple tasks became complicated without her guidance. Pancakes would burn while he chased a child who had run off into the yard, or the milk would spill as he tried to calm another. Even minor chores became monumental. He learned quickly that managing both the ranch and the children required a kind of patience he didn't know he had. Sometimes in the middle of the day he would pause for a brief moment, leaning against the doorframe, closing his eyes and imagining how different things had been just 6 months earlier. Schoolwork was another challenge entirely. The children were at the ages where learning demanded focus and encouragement, yet they often resisted him. He could teach lessons, yes, but without the gentle guidance and storytelling that the nanny had used, it felt like an uphill battle. Math became a source of frustration. Spelling words were forgotten quickly, and reading aloud often ended in tears or complaints. He tried to stay calm, reminding himself that they were only children, that they needed support and patience, not anger or punishment. But patience has limits, and he sometimes caught himself snapping over minor mistakes, immediately feeling guilty afterward. Afternoons were no easier. While he tended to the animals, he had to keep an eye on the children, making sure they didn't wander into danger. The ranch was full of hazards, open barns, tools, and occasionally mischievous animals. The younger ones had to be watched constantly, while the older ones needed guidance and supervision. He tried to involve them in chores, teaching them responsibility, but their lack of experience often created more work than it saved. He would show them how to feed the chickens only to return minutes later and find the food scattered across the yard. He reminded himself that learning took time, that mistakes were part of the process, and yet the frustration never completely faded. Even with the chaos, he refused to let the household fall into complete disorder. Meals still had to be cooked, laundry done, and the house maintained. But the tasks felt endless. One afternoon he found himself sitting on a step outside the kitchen, hands covered in soap and flour, staring at the piles of dishes and the mountain of clothes waiting to be folded. He wondered how he had managed it all in the beginning, before exhaustion had taken such a toll. He missed the way the nanny had organized things, making the house feel alive yet orderly, full of warmth but free from constant chaos. Without her, everything seemed to slip through his fingers, leaving him drained by mid-afternoon. The evenings were perhaps the most challenging. Dinner had to be prepared while the children ran around, still full of energy even after a long day. Bathing them, helping with bedtime routines, and reading stories became a juggling act. He remembered how the nanny would effortlessly handle these tasks, making each step seem natural and smooth. She had a way of calming the children, of keeping them entertained while teaching important lessons that he simply could not replicate. By the time he finally sat down in the quiet of the night, he felt as though he had run a marathon. Muscles aching, mind exhausted, and spirit stretched thin. Despite the exhaustion, the rancher refused to complain. He knew he was fortunate in many ways. He had a beautiful piece of land, children who were healthy and curious, and a home filled with memories of love and laughter. Yet, the absence of consistent help left a noticeable void. The children missed the steady presence of someone who understood them completely, someone who could anticipate their needs and guide them without hesitation. Their smiles were fewer, their patience thinner, and their days longer. The rancher felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him constantly, and there were nights when he lay awake, wondering if he was failing them in ways he could not see. He tried temporary solutions. Neighbors offered to watch the children for a few hours, and friends volunteered to help with chores or lessons. While their efforts were appreciated, nothing seemed to work in the long term. Babysitters came and went, each struggling to keep up with the demands of ranch life. Some were good with the children but had no experience with animals or chores. Others were skilled with the ranch work but could not manage the children effectively. Each attempt left him frustrated, exhausted, and more aware than ever of the need for a consistent presence. The cycle repeated endlessly, day after day, week after week, until he felt as though he was running in place without ever making progress. The rancher's pride made asking for help a complicated matter. He had always valued self-reliance and independence, believing that he could handle any challenge through hard work and determination. Yet, the reality of 6 months without help had forced him to reconsider his beliefs. There was strength in persistence, yes, but there was also wisdom in knowing when to accept assistance. He began to realize that seeking help did not make him weak. It made him human. Still, finding the right person, someone who could seamlessly fit into the rhythm of the ranch and the lives of the children, seemed like an impossible task. Amid the struggle, small moments of joy kept him going. There were times when the children's laughter broke through the tension of the day, moments when a shy smile or a shared story reminded him of the beauty of their innocence. Watching them discover new things, whether it was a chick hatching in the coop or the first frost of winter glittering across the fields, gave him hope. He cherished these moments, storing them in his heart as reminders that despite the hardship, life was still full of wonder. They reminded him why he endured, why he woke each morning ready to face the endless challenges of the day. Over time, he noticed that he had begun to understand the children in new ways. Without the nanny's guidance, he had to learn patience in its rawest form, to read the moods and needs of his children intuitively, and to adapt quickly to whatever came his way. While he still longed for guidance and support, he had grown in unexpected ways. His connection with the children deepened, strengthened by the shared experience of navigating a life that was often unpredictable and demanding. He discovered that love and commitment could carry a family through even the hardest months, though the journey was far from easy. As weeks turned into months, the rancher clung to the hope that someone would eventually arrive to help. He often pictured what it would be like to have a steady, caring presence in the home again, someone who could teach, guide, and nurture the children while sharing the weight of responsibility. He imagined how laughter would return more freely, how routines would flow with ease, and how the household could regain the balance that had been lost. Though he did not know when or how it would happen, the thought of that day gave him the strength to continue. And so, the rancher persisted. He moved through each day with a mixture of determination, exhaustion, and hope, managing the ranch, the children, and the endless tasks as best he could. He learned to find joy in small victories, a meal prepared successfully, a lesson completed, a child smiling after a long day. He embraced the chaos when necessary, finding humor in minor disasters and resilience in repeated challenges. Each day was a battle, but he faced it with unwavering commitment, driven by love for his children and dedication to his home. In the quiet of the night, after the children were asleep and the ranch was still, the rancher would sometimes sit on the porch looking out at the open fields under the starry sky. He reflected on the 6 months that had tested him, the struggles that had shaped him, and the small victories that reminded him of the strength within. Though the days were long and exhausting, he had survived. He had done his best, and that was enough for now. He held on to the belief that help would come, that balance would be restored, and that the laughter and warmth of the household would return. Until then, he continued to carry the weight step by step, day by day, heart full of hope and determination. The rancher had grown used to the rhythm of his life, though it was a rhythm filled with exhaustion, worry, and constant motion. For 6 months he had faced every day alone, managing chores, livestock, and children without the guidance or help he once relied on. He had started to believe that no one could possibly step into that void, that perhaps this was the life he was destined to lead, and yet he still held a quiet hope that someone, anyone, might come along to restore balance, to bring warmth back into the home, and to give him a small relief from the weight that pressed on his shoulders. He did not know who that person might be, and he did not know when they might appear, but the thought kept him moving forward. It was a crisp morning when the unexpected happened. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, the sunlight spilling over the rolling fields and highlighting the mist hovering above the pastures. The rancher had just finished feeding the animals and was walking toward the house, thinking about the list of chores still left to complete for the day. He was deep in thought, pondering how he could manage both the children's lessons and the repairs needed on the fence, when movement at the edge of the driveway caught his eye. A figure was walking slowly toward the ranch, carrying a small bag and moving with quiet confidence. At first he assumed it was a traveler, perhaps someone lost or passing through the area. The figure came closer, and he noticed that it was a woman. She moved with an easy grace, her steps deliberate yet relaxed, as if she were fully aware of the world around her but completely unhurried by it. Her hair was dark and long, falling naturally over her shoulders, and her eyes held a calm intensity that seemed to see everything at once. She looked at the rancher with a steady gaze, and in her presence he felt a strange sense of calm, a feeling he had not experienced in months. As she reached the gate, she stopped and introduced herself simply, "I'm here now." There was no hesitation in her voice, no need for elaborate explanation or formalities. The words were quiet, yet carried a weight that demanded attention. The rancher blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. He glanced at the children, who had begun to notice the visitor as well. Their curiosity was immediate, eyes wide with a mix of caution and interest. The rancher approached her, still uncertain. I don't know what you mean," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. He was wary, as he had learned to be cautious of strangers, especially those who claimed they could help without any proof or reference. "You can't just show up here and—" The woman smiled faintly, a calm and knowing expression that made his words fade before they could fully form. "I've worked with children before," she said. "I know ranch life. I can help." Her voice was soft, but there was a certainty in it that was impossible to ignore. She did not demand his trust, nor did she plead for it. She simply offered what she had to give, and for the first time in months, the rancher felt the possibility of relief stir within him. He looked at the children, who were now watching her with cautious interest. The youngest clung to his leg, hesitant yet intrigued by this new presence. The older ones whispered to each other, their curiosity getting the better of their caution. The rancher sighed, running a hand over his tired face. He knew he had little choice.
"All right,"
He said slowly. "Let's see what you can do." There was hesitation in his tone, but also a hint of hope, a fragile hope that perhaps this stranger could bring the balance they so desperately needed. From that moment, the Apache woman began to integrate herself into the daily life of the ranch, though not without subtlety. She did not rush to take over, nor did she impose strict rules. Instead, she observed, learned, and adapted. She watched how the children moved through their routines, how the rancher managed the chores, and how the animals responded to daily care. She asked questions, offered gentle guidance, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, she began to fit into the rhythm of the household. Her presence brought a sense of calm that the rancher had almost forgotten existed. The children, who had been restless and sometimes irritable without consistent care, responded to her with curiosity and trust. They were drawn to her stories, the way she explained things simply yet meaningfully, and the quiet confidence she exuded in every task. Whether she was helping with homework, preparing meals, or tending to the animals, there was an effortless efficiency in her movements. She seemed to know instinctively how to balance discipline with warmth, structure with freedom, and work with play. The rancher watched all of this with cautious admiration. He had been so used to managing everything alone that it felt strange, almost uncomfortable, to have someone else take the lead in any part of the household. And yet, he could not deny the difference she made. The house felt lighter, the children more engaged, and even the chores seemed less daunting. He realized that her presence was not just practical, it was transformative. The energy in the home shifted from exhaustion and struggle to a quiet harmony he had not felt in months. The first week was a period of adjustment for everyone. The children were learning to trust her, testing boundaries, and exploring the limits of this new arrangement. The rancher found himself relaxing slightly, allowing her to take initiative, though he remained cautious. Each day he saw small victories: a child completing a lesson without frustration, a meal prepared more efficiently, a chore done with the children's assistance. The woman encouraged independence, teaching the children to participate in daily tasks while also providing gentle guidance when needed. She also shared stories of her own life and culture, bringing a new perspective into the household. Her tales of the land, traditions, and lessons learned through experience fascinated the children, drawing them in and sparking their imagination. The rancher listened quietly, realizing that she was teaching more than practical skills. She was teaching resilience, curiosity, and respect for the world around them. Each story, each small lesson wove a thread of connection between her and the family, gradually creating a bond that felt natural and unforced.
By the second week, the changes became more pronounced.
The children laughed more freely, worked together on tasks, and showed genuine excitement about learning. The rancher began to notice that he no longer felt the crushing weight of exhaustion as acutely. While the responsibilities of the ranch remained, they were now shared, distributed, and managed more smoothly. He observed the woman quietly, marveling at the way she handled challenges with patience and confidence. Her ability to adapt, understand, and guide was something he had longed for, something he had almost given up hope of finding. It was not a perfect adjustment. There were still moments of resistance, frustration, and minor mishaps. Children are unpredictable after all, and even the most skilled caretaker encounters challenges. But these moments were smaller, more manageable, and often transformed into learning opportunities. The woman handled each situation with calm determination, never raising her voice unnecessarily, yet never shirking responsibility. She had a way of turning mistakes into lessons, frustration into understanding, and chaos into structured activity. The rancher, witnessing all of this, felt a growing sense of gratitude and relief. He realized that his long months of struggle had not been in vain. They had prepared him to recognize the value of someone like her, someone who could bring not only practical help but emotional balance, guidance, and stability. The household slowly began to breathe again, the rhythm of life flowing more naturally, and the laughter of the children returning to fill the rooms with joy. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky with shades of gold and purple, the rancher sat on the porch, watching the children play under her supervision. He felt a sense of peace he had not known for months. He knew that the challenges at the ranch would continue, that there would always be work to do. But now he understood that life did not have to be a constant struggle. Support had arrived unexpectedly, and it had changed everything. The presence of the Apache woman had not just restored order, it had restored hope, energy, and connection. The rancher leaned back, letting the cool evening breeze wash over him. He thought back to the 6 months of struggle, the exhaustion, the worry, and the countless small victories that had kept him going. And now, seeing the transformation before him, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. Someone had arrived at exactly the right time, bringing not just help, but a sense of harmony, balance, and care that he had feared might never return. And in that moment he realized something important. Sometimes, life's solutions arrive in the most unexpected forms, quietly, steadily, and without fanfare. But with the power to change everything, life on the ranch began to transform in ways the rancher had not thought possible. With the Apache woman's presence, the household, which had been weighed down by months of struggle and exhaustion, slowly started to find its rhythm again. The changes were subtle at first. A small smile from a child, a chore completed without reminders, laughter echoing through the hallways. But they grew steadily, weaving warmth and energy back into the home. The rancher watched all of this with a mixture of relief and quiet amazement. He realized that her role went far beyond simple help. She was becoming the heartbeat of their daily life, bringing stability and calm in a way that felt almost effortless. The children adapted quickly to her presence, drawn by the gentle authority she carried. She had a unique way of connecting with them, listening intently, asking questions that made them think, and encouraging them to explore their surroundings safely. She taught them lessons not only through words but through actions, showing patience, compassion, and respect. The children were fascinated by her stories of her culture and her experiences, often gathering around her after chores or lessons to hear tales of the land, of traditions, and of life lessons learned the hard way. These stories captivated their imagination, teaching values like kindness, perseverance, and courage in a way that felt natural and memorable. Her influence extended beyond storytelling. The children's routines, which had been erratic and inconsistent during the 6 months without a nanny, began to fall into a gentle order. Morning chores became more manageable, as she involved the children in feeding the animals, collecting eggs, and tidying the yard, turning tasks into games that were both educational and fun. Lessons in reading, writing, and arithmetic became engaging rather than frustrating, as she introduced creative methods to keep the children's attention while guiding them patiently through challenges. Homework, which had once been a battlefield, was now approached with curiosity and determination. The rancher often found himself observing quietly from the porch, astonished at how effortlessly she had changed the household dynamic. Meals, too, became moments of connection rather than stress. She prepared simple yet nourishing dishes, teaching the children how to help in the kitchen, measuring ingredients, stirring gently, and learning to appreciate the process of cooking. She encouraged the children to take pride in their contributions, praising effort and patience over perfection. The rancher noticed the difference immediately. Mealtimes, which had once been chaotic and rushed, now became opportunities for conversation, laughter, and shared enjoyment. Even the youngest child, who had been shy and clingy at first, eagerly helped set the table or stir a pot, beaming with pride at each small accomplishment. The rancher himself felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. For months, he had carried the burden of running the ranch and caring for the children alone, his energy constantly stretched thin. Now, with the Apache woman's guidance, he found moments to breathe, to observe, and even to relax slightly without guilt. He could tend to the larger tasks around the ranch with renewed focus, confident that the children were in safe, capable hands. Her presence allowed him to reclaim a sense of balance he had thought lost forever. He realized that help did not diminish his strength, it enhanced it, allowing him to be a better father, a better rancher, and a calmer, more present figure in the children's lives. The bond between the children and the Apache woman deepened with each passing day. She taught them more than chores or lessons. She taught them resilience, responsibility, and the importance of empathy. She guided them gently through conflicts, encouraging understanding and patience rather than punishment or anger. When disagreements arose, she helped the children express their feelings constructively, teaching them to listen as well as to speak. The rancher observed these moments with quiet admiration. He had never realized how much influence a patient, skilled caregiver could have, not just on the children's behavior, but on their character. Her wisdom extended to the rancher as well. Though he had always been self-reliant and practical, he began to notice how her perspective brought clarity and insight to problems he had struggled to solve alone. She offered suggestions for managing both the children and the ranch, not in a commanding way, but as gentle guidance. She encouraged him to take small breaks, to delegate tasks, and to trust the children with responsibilities appropriate to their age. Slowly, the rancher realized that life did not have to be a constant struggle against chaos, that balance and harmony could exist when tasks were shared and when care was given thoughtfully. Even the animals seemed to respond to her presence. Cows followed her calmly during feeding. Chickens clustered nearby as if drawn to her energy, and the dogs relaxed in her presence, sensing the care and patience she brought. It was as if her calm authority extended beyond the children to every living thing on the ranch. The rancher, watching all of this unfold, felt a profound sense of gratitude. For the first time in months, he saw a household not just surviving but thriving, a family restored to its natural rhythm. Week by week, the changes became more noticeable. The children laughed freely, worked together, and approached tasks with curiosity rather than reluctance. The house, once heavy with exhaustion and disorder, now resonated with warmth and energy. The rancher began to understand that this transformation was not simply about chores or lessons. It was about presence, guidance, and the steady influence of someone who genuinely cared. The Apache woman had brought a sense of continuity and stability that had been missing, turning a house filled with tension and struggle into a home filled with laughter, learning, and love. The rancher's own heart was changing as well. He felt lighter, more patient, and more capable of handling the demands of the day. The burden he had carried alone for 6 months was now shared, not only in practical terms, but emotionally as well. He realized that life on the ranch was not meant to be carried solely by one person, and that accepting help was not a sign of weakness, but a form of strength. Observing the family thrive under her care, he developed a deep respect for her skills, her wisdom, and her ability to nurture both children and adults alike. In quiet moments, he reflected on the transformation that had occurred. He remembered the 6 months of struggle, the long days of exhaustion, and the countless challenges he had faced without support. Those months had tested him, shaped him, and prepared him to recognize the value of the Apache woman's presence. She had arrived at exactly the right time, bringing not only help but understanding, patience, and a sense of order that had been missing for too long. The children, too, felt the difference deeply. They no longer approached tasks with reluctance or frustration. They looked forward to learning, to helping with chores, and to hearing the stories she shared. The bond they had formed was one of trust and admiration, a connection that went beyond simple instruction to touch their hearts and minds. They were learning resilience, compassion, and responsibility in a way that felt natural and engaging, guided by someone who understood both their needs and their potential. Even the rancher found moments of joy he had not expected. Watching the children play, listen, and work together brought a sense of peace he had not known in months. Simple things, like a shared meal, a story told in the evening light, or the children helping with animals without complaint. He realized that the household had regained not only efficiency, but also warmth, connection, and meaning. Life on the ranch was no longer a constant struggle. It was a shared journey, filled with small victories, laughter, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that his family was cared for and nurtured. The transformation was not instantaneous, nor was it complete without effort, but it was steady and undeniable. The Apache woman had brought a rhythm to the household, a balance to daily life, and a sense of hope to the rancher and the children alike. She had reminded them that with patience, guidance, and care, even the most challenging circumstances could become manageable and even joyful. As evening fell and the children settled for the night, the rancher sat quietly on the porch, watching the fading light across the fields. He reflected on the months of struggle, the exhaustion, and the constant weight he had carried alone. And now, seeing the harmony restored, the laughter returned, and the household thriving, he understood the true power of care, guidance, and presence. The Apache woman had not only helped manage the ranch and the children, she had restored the spirit of the home, teaching lessons in patience, resilience, and the quiet strength found in shared effort. For the first time in months, the rancher felt a sense of peace he had feared lost forever. The struggles of the past were now tempered by hope, gratitude, and the knowledge that life could be both demanding and beautiful when shared with the right person. The children's laughter drifted from the house, mingling with the evening breeze, and the rancher smiled, knowing that their home was alive once more, not just with tasks completed, but with warmth, love, and the joy of connection. Time passed, and life on the ranch settled into a rhythm that felt both familiar and entirely new. The children thrived under the Apache woman's care, their laughter echoing across the fields as they played, learned, and helped with daily chores. The rancher, who had once felt the crushing weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders alone, now moved through his days with a sense of peace and confidence. Tasks that had once seemed overwhelming were now manageable, shared between him, the children, and the woman who had transformed their home. The rancher often paused during the day to observe the changes, quietly marveling at the harmony she had brought into their lives. Looking back, he remembered the 6 months before her arrival, the chaos, the exhaustion, the constant struggle to balance ranch work and childcare. He could recall the long mornings of scrambled breakfasts, the afternoons filled with incomplete lessons and messy chores, and the evenings spent quietly wishing for relief. Those months had been difficult, testing him in ways he had never expected. And yet he realized that they had prepared him to fully appreciate the transformation that had followed. He had learned the meaning of perseverance, patience, and resilience, and now he could recognize the true value of support when it arrived. The Apache woman continued to guide the children in ways that went far beyond practical skills. She encouraged curiosity, teaching them to observe the world around them, to ask questions, and to find answers through both experience and reflection. She shared stories from her life and her culture, helping the children understand lessons in kindness, courage, and respect. They learned how to care for the animals with responsibility and empathy, how to approach tasks with patience, and how to support each other through both small disagreements and challenges. Her presence helped shape not only their routines but also their character, leaving a lasting impact on their development and understanding of the world. Even the smallest routines on the ranch became opportunities for learning and connection. Feeding the chickens, gathering eggs, and tending to the gardens were no longer mundane chores. They became lessons in responsibility, teamwork, and observation. The children learned to notice patterns, anticipate problems, and act independently, all under her patient guidance. The rancher watched these moments with pride and gratitude, seeing the children grow more confident, capable, and thoughtful with each passing day. He understood that these skills would serve them for a lifetime, far beyond the boundaries of the ranch. The household itself had transformed as well. Where once there had been tension, exhaustion, and quiet frustration, there was now warmth, laughter, and a sense of calm order. Meals became times for conversation and shared enjoyment, with the children participating willingly and taking pride in their contributions. Evenings were filled with stories, games, and gentle guidance, fostering bonds of trust and affection between the children, the rancher, and the Apache woman. The rancher often found himself stepping back to watch quietly, letting her lead, and realizing that he could finally breathe without guilt or worry. Through her guidance, the rancher also discovered a renewed sense of balance within himself. For months he had carried the weight of responsibility alone, often feeling overwhelmed and isolated. Now he experienced the relief of shared effort, the comfort of knowing that someone he trusted was watching over the children and the home. He realized that asking for help was not a sign of weakness but an act of wisdom and courage. By accepting her guidance, he had allowed not only his household, but also himself to thrive. The presence of someone capable, caring, and steady had changed everything. The children's growth was evident in countless small ways. The youngest, once shy and hesitant, now explored the world with curiosity and confidence, guided by the woman's gentle encouragement. The older children learned patience, problem-solving, and the joy of accomplishment, whether through completing lessons, helping with chores, or learning new skills. Conflicts between siblings were resolved with guidance and understanding, teaching lessons in communication and empathy. The rancher saw not only a change in behavior but a change in attitude, a sense of pride, joy, and resilience that had been missing for months. The Apache woman's influence extended beyond practical skills and lessons. She taught by example, showing the children how to approach challenges calmly and thoughtfully, how to treat others with respect, and how to value the land and animals around them. She demonstrated that care and effort could coexist with patience and understanding, and that strength was not only measured in hard work, but also in compassion and awareness. Through her actions, the children learned lessons that could not be taught through words alone. The rancher's own relationship with the children deepened as well. With the support of the Apache woman, he found more time to engage with them meaningfully. He could read stories without rushing, play games without distraction, and teach skills with patience rather than frustration. He saw them grow and learn in ways that brought pride and joy, and he understood that this was possible only because of the quiet, steady presence of someone who cared deeply for the family. His appreciation for her grew daily, not only for the practical help she provided, but for the way she had restored life, warmth, and connection to their home. Months turned into a season, and the ranch became a place of energy, laughter, and learning once more. The children's routines were smooth, the chores manageable, and the home full of warmth. Even the animals seemed to sense the shift, moving calmly and confidently through their daily activities. The rancher felt a profound sense of peace as he watched the children interact with the woman, seeing the trust, respect, and affection that had grown between them. He realized that this balance, this harmony, was something he had longed for but had almost given up hope of finding. In quiet moments, the rancher reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The 6 months of struggle had been difficult, exhausting, and at times overwhelming, but they had taught him the value of resilience, perseverance, and patience. They had also taught him humility, showing him that even someone capable and hardworking could benefit from the guidance and support of another. And when the Apache woman arrived, she brought not only help, but understanding, calm, and wisdom, the missing pieces that had restored the household and transformed their lives. The rancher often thought of her words the first day she arrived. "I'm here now." Simple, quiet, and filled with certainty. Those words had been more than a statement. They had been a promise, a reassurance that someone capable and caring would step into their lives at exactly the right time. He realized that her presence had not just helped with daily tasks, it had changed the family's energy, rebuilt confidence, and brought back a sense of joy that had been missing for months. Even in the simplest moments, her influence was felt. She encouraged the children to play outdoors, to explore nature, and to observe the world with curiosity. She guided them through lessons and chores with patience, making learning fun and rewarding. She nurtured their confidence, allowing them to take pride in their accomplishments and understand the importance of persistence and care. The rancher watched as they laughed freely, worked together, and approached each day with curiosity and excitement, a transformation he had once thought impossible. The rancher also reflected on the importance of timing. Sometimes life's help comes in unexpected ways, arriving when it is needed most, quietly and without warning. The Apache woman had appeared at the perfect moment, offering not just practical support, but emotional stability, guidance, and warmth. She had taught him that strength comes not only from hard work, but also from the willingness to accept help, to trust, and to share responsibility. The family's renewed energy, laughter, and confidence were a testament to her influence and the profound impact one person can have when they arrive at the right time with the right intention. As the sun set over the ranch, painting the fields with warm shades of orange and gold, the rancher sat on the porch watching the children play under her guidance. He felt gratitude, relief, and a sense of peace that had been absent for too long. The struggles of the past months were still in his memory, but they no longer weighed him down. Instead, they served as a reminder of resilience, hope, and the value of care and guidance. He knew that life would continue to have challenges, but now he also knew that with the right support, those challenges could be met with confidence and calm. The rancher smiled as the children ran past him, laughing and shouting with joy. He looked at the Apache woman who moved effortlessly among them, guiding, teaching, and caring with patience and love. He understood, deeply, that she had not only restored order to their household but had also restored their hearts and spirits. Her presence had transformed a family stretched thin by months of struggle into a home filled with warmth, connection, and hope. In the quiet of that evening, as the sky deepened into twilight, the rancher realized something important. Life's challenges are often hardest when faced alone, but they can become manageable and even beautiful when shared with someone capable, compassionate, and present. The Apache woman had come at exactly the right time, and her influence had reshaped their lives in ways that would last far beyond the chores completed or lessons taught. She had brought back laughter, balance, and love, teaching lessons that would stay with the children and the rancher for years to come. And so, as night settled over the ranch and the stars began to twinkle above, the rancher felt a profound sense of gratitude. The home, once quiet and tense, was now alive with energy, warmth, and connection. The children slept peacefully, guided by her care. The rancher finally understood the true power of timing, patience, and support. Life on the ranch had been restored, not just practically, but emotionally, spiritually, and joyfully. The Apache woman's simple arrival, her quiet words, "I'm here now," had changed everything, reminding him that sometimes the help we need comes in the most unexpected and perfect ways.